welcome to Credit Shift News and Update. I'm Paul Sweeney. I'm co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer here at Webio. And this week I'm joined by Delia Jones, our Chief Operating Officer.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone. Great to be back with you, Paul. And I think we've got quite a lot to talk about today.
Great to have you back. And we will be bringing you some of the recent news stories, events, reports, and trends in the credit industry. So before we kick off, we do have some news. Webio are delighted to have been nominated this year for Best Technology Provider, Vulnerable Customer Identification category at the very prestigious UK Credit Awards. Delia, can you maybe explain to us or to our viewers how we got nominated for this and what it is?
Yeah, so we're really thrilled to be nominated. So always at Webio, it's been important dealing as we do in the credit and collections environment. It's crucially important to us and to our clients to be able to identify vulnerable conversations and manage those conversations appropriately. So what we do now with our technology and the way it's being used today is that the technology is getting very clever at using AI to identify those vulnerabilities, then taking that to that next level of understanding. So understanding the type of vulnerability, and then also being able to take proactive decisions, both from an automation point of view and from an agent point of view, to really enable positive outcomes for those conversations, and then report on that to ensure that the outcomes are comparable to conversations that weren't identified as vulnerable. So that's why we've been nominated, and one that we're really, really proud to be up for.
Oh, sounds great. I know we've been talking about vulnerability a lot on the podcast over the last year, and it is something that we think is kind of a core job to be done in our area. All right, well, let's move on to some general industry news. UK Finance reports growth in credit card balances outstanding was largely uncharged in the year to February, with the volume of balances incurring interest fell a little during the same period. This partly reflects the continuing rising costs of goods and reassuringly means we haven't seen sign of a fall in customers' ability to manage their credit card repayments. So although costs are going up, balances are going up, people seem to be on top of it still. New research by Ofcom has found that 4 in 5 telecom customers who look for information about debt support turn to their telecoms provider for that information. So even though just over 2% of customers missed a payment and less than 1% missed 2 or more payments to their telecom provider, it's still interesting that when asked, 4 out of 5 of those who hadn't missed a payment yet said that they would look to their service provider for the information about how to get that debt support. I thought that was really interesting, Delia, that the first place people look is their actual provider as opposed to maybe Comreg or a debt solutions or agency related to debt. They're looking to the vendors.
Yeah, I guess this comes really from the people that you feel you have the relationship with. So they are your provider. They're the company that you feel that connection to, and so that's your first port of call. But obviously these telecoms providers will be in a position to then signpost to appropriate assistance where necessary.
Yeah, I think we've seen that in other companies that they really need to be able to link from the vendor themselves to someone like Step Change or an advice agency and to make sure that connection isn't dropped and that link is made. So our third piece of general industry news, MasterCard and Visa are to face greater scrutiny in the UK's payment systems regulator over how these companies leverage their market dominance to extract more scheme and processing fees without simultaneously demonstrating that the service has significantly improved at the same rate. I think we can expect this one to come to a similar conclusion as a USA version of this case. Again, I think we're going to see a little bit more in this credit shift today on MasterCard and Visa, in particular about some of their innovations that they're trying to push out there to make that gap smaller between what they're charging and what people are getting for it. Moving on to section 2, FinTech, Buy Now, Pay Later, AI and related news. We like following Klarna as an innovator in the industry, and we thought that a few recent developments might spur your thinking. The first is that it is being reported that Klarna are using ChatGPT or GPT to draft legal contracts. It reportedly reduces the time taken to generate a contract from an hour to 10 minutes. So yes, they still must be overviewed by real lawyers, but it's interesting to see that such a major piece of paperwork is getting some AI attention. Related to that as well, Klarna are saying that over 87% of its employees are using Gen AI tools, including OpenAI's ChatGPT and its own internal AI assistant. And when you dig in, it's mostly communications, marketing, and the legal example referred to above. So it's reported that 85% of all employees use Klarna's internal chatbot, Kiki, and that the chatbot is responding to 2,000 queries a day. So not a lot really, given the number of employees at Klarna. Does any of that surprise you, Delia, that maybe people are
I mean,
using it or not using it?
I think we're seeing it, and we're seeing it a lot here, seeing it everywhere, that people are very interested and excited about AI, sort of similar to the days when you first got your hands on an internet browser. And it is being used to really speed up the tasks, but it still is at a position where hopefully you would expect all of your employees to be still doing the necessary work to review that, to tailor it, to ensure that it's relevant. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me really. I guess it's, Klarna are leading the way, but we're seeing it across lots of companies that we speak to. People are starting to get excited, or are very excited about it, starting to use it, but not really yet has it become embedded in sort of standard business processes. It's not really yet being used to automate those without any human oversight. There's just that lack of trust, especially in the industries that we work with.
Yeah, I think for me, it really shows that from the CFO down to the agent on their conversation screen, everyone is going to have some form of co-pilot, but everything has to evolve together to make that happen. So the co-pilots, how you make your co-pilot, how that's provisioned, where it's getting its data from, how you're training your models, all that has to happen for it to really develop or deliver that experience for the agent or the customer. And it's not easy. Like this, I know it might seem like it's magic at times, but it's a lot of work goes on to make that happen.
It is, and we
Um,
judge it against the level of human sort of capability. So we're quite harsh judges of AI, really, because it is, it is just, it's technology. So it's you can't expect it to be doing what you would expect a human agent to do, and to have that flexibility that a human agent would. So at the moment, I think the agent's jobs are okay for now.
in our last credit shift interview, we came across the idea that um, maybe we have expectations of AI agents that are above and beyond what we expect of human agents. And the example was, and I saw that research elsewhere, which was if you called up a contact center and asked 100 agents a particular piece of information, like, am I eligible for an upgrade, right? Just to take an example, maybe two or three of them will come back and go, yeah, absolutely you are. And so it's human error. But if an AI made that error, we'd consider it unacceptable. So there
Yeah.
are, as you say, differences in expectations that are real and have to be accounted for.
Yeah, it's that benchmark as well, isn't it? From saying, we use it quite a lot at Webio, where if the conversation flow goes down a different path, you say, well, as a human agent, would I have understood what that customer was asking for? And quite often you wouldn't. It's very ambiguous the way that we speak. So yeah, it's
Okay. Well, in the third bit of kind of news here, just I said I would come back to talking about Visa. And the reason I'm coming back to them is on the credit shift, we've touched on a lot of these topics before, and so you shouldn't be kind of totally surprised by them, but it does give an example of where Visa see the value kind of evolving. And so they announced a couple of initiatives. So Visa Flexible Credential allows a customer to choose a funding source for any given transaction, either in advance by setting up rules or at the time of the transaction. So you could pay by debit, credit, or buy now, pay later. And because this is implemented at the network level, the capability is available to all Visa customers. Again, we think that customers will choose how they pay. So when you're in that final bit of how do you want to pay, flick, 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 it's by bank, by card, pick a scheme, open banking, however you want to do it. And so those choices, I think, will be ultimately required by customers. and how that's presented and how that's fulfilled, I think, will become a challenge. The second initiative was the kind of tap to everything. So tap the card against the phone or device to pay. We do it every day ourselves. But tap to confirm your identity when online shopping is particularly interesting. So you might tap your card off your phone and it would take that as an identity check, and that would be a big fraud remover. And I think that the other example they were saying is tap to add a card. So perhaps a card tap creates a token that is passed to the app and then kept on file there on your phone. So another one, Visa payment passkey. This quote says it all for me. Our passkeys, designed specifically for payments, represent a massive paradigm shift in our industry because it confirms identity without interrupting the checkout experience. So I think we're going to see much more movement in passkeys as opposed to passwords or 2FA. And the pay by bank, which seems to be seeing an uplift all around. Visa is also doing account-to-account payments. So the acquisition of Tink gave them presence in Europe in the open banking arena. And this has been seen as a position for them to disrupt some of the bill payments. And I think we've been following this for a while, where if open banking was kind of working properly, which it isn't right now, you'd be able to set up an open payments relationship. So pay this bill every month, every week, pay it as a variable amount, and give permissions and guidance as to what you want the platform to allow you to take. Because none of us want someone coming in and taking more than we expected out of the account. I mean, there has to be some rules there, but we should be able to change our payment date like a slider. Like, I don't want to pay Friday, I want to pay Monday. And so I think this is just a huge opportunity for people to be more flexible. And the last bit I thought was particularly interesting, given the third part of our conversation today, is Visa were talking about data tokens. And these are like wrappers you put on your payment data. So Visa issue a private data token to the merchant, complete with AI-generated insights based on the customer's transaction data. The data token can then be used with the merchant's AI models to deliver real-time recommendations to the shopper. Visa will share the data token to the consumer's bank to capture where the data has been shared and with whom. And so the customers can then easily review who that data was shared with and why, etc., and revoke the permissions if they want. But I thought it was super interesting that two little trends are overlapping here. You've got, hey, you're involved in a payment process. We have extra data that we can put in around this. And then that data or model can be shared with another AI and enriched by that token or the information contained in that token to create personalization. And I think it's super interesting, but I'm not so sure about how comfortable I am with the whole situation. It's like, what gets pushed into that? Like, what's in that recommendation? Do I want all that information that's in my payment history to be used as a AI generated recommendation? Which brings us to our third section. And so this week, instead of going through a report, I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of points that I've seen in the industry. So OpenAI released an impressive voice assistant. I mean, it's really impressive if you look at it. If you've been in the industry as many years as I have, you can see that it's got best-in-class systems for barging. It does full duplex real-time processing. So it's just not waiting for you to finish. It's actually processing the conversation as you go, which is a big step forward. There've been huge improvements in tone and tenor. It seemed to be able to inflect in a manner that was very human, very, very nuanced. However, OpenAI have trained against a real actress's data or an impression of an actress to get to the point where the voice seemed like Scarlett Johansson from Her. And so while OpenAI might be able to point to it and go, well, we didn't train this on her data, or we just got an actress and we, meld this together. It really looks like reverse engineering to me, and I don't think it's a great look for them. Delia, does this strike you in any way?
It does. So it makes you quite uncomfortable, doesn't it? Because it's very telling how, the actions that we take as companies, as enterprises, are very telling in sort of the conversations that are happening behind the scenes. And it does make you uncomfortable. I think with OpenAI, they're obviously very focused on achieving the goal, and they seem to believe that the ends justifies the means, and it's for the rest of us, I guess, to discover how comfortable we are with that. Scarlett Johansson obviously not comfortable at all, and that there's a lot of this that the technology is racing ahead. The AI and the ethics discussions are they're trying to keep pace in Europe, but are they going fast enough? I think for a lot of us in the industry, we see our clients are very concerned, and rightly so, about how this AI will start. We saw Slack exploding up over the weekend, just about how they were starting to use data to train their AI. And it's like, where does that balance come? Where's the responsibility?
Gotcha. I think it also comes to the area of OpenAI abandoning their, I think, AI alignment, AI ethics alignment committee or group. So not a great week for them. And I think it reminds me, in the same week, a lot happening. Meta shut down their kind of workplace group. So that's like, you as a company, all your employees could be on a kind of an intranet kind of on Meta and be able to see the flow of what was happening with a workflow product, and they just kind of closed that down. Great news for Irish company Vivo, who get to take over that service and that customer base. But I think the reason that it didn't take off from the start was it's a misposition. People didn't trust Meta with any data that they shared with them, and particularly in enterprise. So it wasn't a great fit for Meta to be in that particular place in the enterprise, and it just didn't resonate with their brand. And I just feel that OpenAI might be kind of maybe trying to bridge that gap as well. And Microsoft, I don't know if you saw this during the week, Microsoft's recall feature.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think of that.
It's so the recall feature, just, you can see it as the basis of like a Black Mirror episode, can't you? But it's I guess that we'll have to see how it works. There's a lot in there. Again, working in highly regulated industries, because we at Webio are so aware of how data can be used, of how it should be used, and all the ethics around it, maybe we're a little more fine-tuned to these things. But again, the level of uncomfortableness, it's a large enterprise, Microsoft, Meta, all of these large enterprises. What are they going to do with your data? And ultimately, which one of them do you trust?
I think it's maybe it's my age. I know I've been around longer, and I remember Microsoft before its current management, and all the security problems I used to have with my computer, updating my software from that the terrible old days of Vista. Before that, when you had to
I'm
update
too
all
young to
your
remember any of this.
I that's why I had to explain it to Delia. Obviously, the old days. But I think this aligns with the idea of on-device computing, where you have your own language model in your own container on your own computer, and it's all kind of tokenized and tied to the device and tied to the chip in your computer. So for this particular feature to work, you do have to have the latest models of Microsoft with the latest silicon in it. That is so that you can process this kind of just sheer amount of data. But I think it's pointing one future, which is you may want to have your own AI. You may want to have it on your own desktop. Just the question is how much could you get into that and control it if you wanted to? Like, could you actually really fully get into it and discover what it's doing with your data and how it's choosing to use it? Some of the use cases that have been flagged are is it seeing your passwords go in? Is it seeing government documents? Is it seeing confidential customer documents? Because it's screenshotting, and it's on your device. I get it. And I get that it actually may end up being technically more private than everything over the cloud. But I think it's interesting this week that we're seeing so much on the topic of ethics, privacy, security. Like, it's a topic that isn't going anywhere, and people really want it addressed. And it doesn't matter how amazingly cool the her on your phone is. If you think for a second that your data is being misused, you're out. For as an enterprise, as customers, you might be thrilled. We could be all playing with it on the weekend. I had some very interesting conversations with my ChatGPT earlier, and it's phenomenal. So I'd say go play, discover it. I'm on the paid version of ChatGPT, so I have that new model, and I'll tell you, it is phenomenal. It's just amazing. And I was in a class. I was giving a class on Monday, and it was a bunch of American students, and I was asking them, "Hey, who here uses an intelligent assistant like ChatGPT?" All the hands went up, right? And then, like, who would really be hurt if it wasn't available anymore? And a lot of hands came down, but there was 3 or 4 hands left up. And the thing they had in common was that the assistant helped them to think. It helped them to organize their thoughts. It helped them to record their feelings and emotions about things, and to help them guide their way through materials. And so I think that the assistant helper to use, the cognitive assistant, an emotional assistant, I think there's lots of different ways that this can evolve, but this is not going anywhere. Everyone's going to be using assistants in some form or other. We just got to make sure that we're raising our hands to say, hey, we're holding our hands up for the use of ethical AI, and we'll continue to do so, I think.
Yeah. I mean, from a HR perspective, just having that on somebody's laptop, say it's a work laptop, and you've got their AI assistant, and that's all of their inner thoughts, their cognitive load. Who owns that? Does the company own it? Does the individual own it? It's lots of interesting stuff to sort out. But
yeah, I'm sure there's settings somewhere that you can change, like only use this file, not that file, not this thing. But the thing is with people is they go to the default settings.
They do. And then when you come to move, like you break your laptop or you decide to change ecosystems, you could imagine that could be, that could be quite a wrench to leave your AI that you've communicated with and built up a relationship with. But probably
you've trained it.
Episode. Yeah, exactly. It's yours.
You've trained it.
It's part of you.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think they again, because I'm just a little bit older, I was there for the 2000 change from like 1998 to 2000 was the internet, and people really went kind of crazy with everything that could happen with the internet. And then, of course, there was the crash in 2001. But the point is that 20 years later, everything that people were talking about in 2000 happened, and happened even bigger than people ever thought it would. Mm-hmm. It was just a matter of time. And so I think that we're in the same position here with AI. It's just a matter of timing, and when things get picked up appropriately, and when things are mature enough and steady enough. And I think it's just going to happen much quicker than it happened with the internet at first. Okay, folks, I think that's us for the Credit Shift this week. I'd like to thank you, Delia, for joining us and having a chat about this particularly useful topics this week. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again this week. And if you do want to do so, do check out the Webio website, where we keep you updated with all our news about what's happening at Webio. And I'd like you to check out the rest of our interviews in the Credit Shift series. There's some really interesting people we've interviewed there. And I think we're going to have a couple more interesting people over the next month. And we're going to increase the pace at which we interview people, because the feedback has been just so good. Okay, folks, talk to you next week.